Motion to approve action items. You want me to wait?
Would everyone who's leaving please try to leave quietly
Quietly.
because we still have business to conduct?
And we are live.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Okay, go ahead.
Move that action items numbered, okay, I guess it's 2 through 20 be approved as recommended in this agenda with the exception of, does anybody?
Yeah, I think that we have, what's the last one? I think we have, we had a supplement that was emailed to us late.
Right.
Oh, it is 20.
20, yeah.
Okay, 20 is the last one.
I'm on top
Okay.
of the
Sorry, I
game.
thought it was 22. So, yes. All right, so
I didn't see anything that
I
needed
don't
to be
think there's
called for a
anything
roll
that
call.
needs a roll call vote, but there are some people who have patiently waited, and we want
Yes, to be recognized.
Yes, we want to introduce them. So, okay,
Okay, so I'm,
ready?
read it.
I had questions on a couple of the items.
Okay, do you
Which
want
ones?
to identify those?
The ones that involved the purchase of the computers, there was 3 or 4 different ones. With
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
there
I'm
was.
going to ask can ask Mr. Patterson to come
4.
up.
Yeah, or Mr. Wall, whomever.
And Mr. yeah.
Good evening.
The question that I've got is, and this goes over probably 3, maybe 4 different motions, or action items, I'm sorry, is with the purchase of the Chromebooks. When I was running some numbers on the cost per book, I'm seeing different costs every single time.
Correct.
So there was one, I think, that was talked about last June that there had been approved, and then there was another request that came back in August. But somehow the cost per Chromebook had gone up by $30 each in those 2 months. And then the other large request that we're being asked to do today goes up by another $30 per Chromebook. But then the ones for Lori's school drop by $80 per Chromebook. And it just seems strange that we've got that big of a discrepancy between the 4 different ones. So can you give me some insight?
Sure, thank you for bringing that up. We follow the 22I pricing, the statewide bid, and as you know, technology changes pretty constantly. And there are 2 types of Chromebooks that we can purchase. There's touchscreen and non-touchscreen. And for the most part, we've chosen to purchase the touchscreen. As we move forward, there's additional Android apps that are written for Android that will be usable on the Chromebooks. And we found that a lot of the kids are used to touching screens now, so it becomes a little more powerful and useful for the kids. So we've been purchasing the touchscreens, which are a little more expensive, and Laurie has chosen to purchase some of the non-touch screens. So that's the difference in the cost there.
What is the shelf life of a touch screen versus a non-touch screen then?
The shelf life is essentially the same for both of them. The shelf life we're predicting at 5 years.
Even with students banging away on a touch screen versus,
Yes, the newest touchscreens are actually convertibles in that they flip over and fold flat. But the model that we buy is a ruggedized model that's holds up and has proven to hold up to student use so far.
So that's the difference on the 2 that are pretty much concurrent,
Yes, sir.
is one's touchscreen, one's not.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
That was the question.
Okay, all right, so we're now back to the motion.
I don't think we have a support yet, this motion.
Did we,
I thought I read it.
okay, we've
Yeah.
read the motion. Do we have a first? I'm sorry, I'm getting tired.
I support.
Thank you. Okay. Can we, is there any dissent on this, or can I attach a unanimous? We're unanimous, very good, okay. Dr. Maleka?
So I have some congratulations to some new principals that were just appointed in their positions by the Board of Education. I will mention all their names, and I'll ask each of them to come up. We have Miss Zaina Jabril, the new principal at Smith Middle School. Ms. Amal Al-Qadre, the new principal at Snow Elementary, Mr. Dan Blessing, the new principal at Howard Elementary, and Ms. Zaina Tibia, the new principal at Lindbergh. She's out of town, not here today due to her other contract, but she will be available to start the year. And so I'd like to, if we can show appreciation and congratulate them. And I'll ask Mr. Beal to come up first.
Good evening, everyone. I know it's been a long evening for everybody. Good evening, board members. Good evening, President Lane, Dr. Maliko. I'm extremely honored and humbled to be here tonight. I've been working in the district for about 20 years. I remember when I was appointed in 1997 as a third grade teacher. Several of my students were here tonight. Some of them got up and spoke. Some of them are in the audience. I'm very proud of that. I'm very excited and look forward to leading Smith, and I know that I will do whatever it takes to move Smith forward. I'm invested in this community, as was everybody that was here tonight. I'm proud to say that I'm the product of Dearborn Public Schools, as are my 3 sons, one of who accompanied me today. All 3 of them are college graduates and are now enjoying successful careers, and that's thanks to the foundation that they received here in Dearborn Public Schools. My goal is to do the same thing for every student that walks through my doors. My motto is to treat every child the way that I would want my own children to be treated. You can't go wrong when you have that in your in the back of your mind. Like I said, I'll do whatever it takes to move Smith forward. I look forward to working with Smith staff, families, and students. Many of the Smith families I already have relationships with because of my time at Etzel Ford. So I'm very excited to reconnect with them. And I thank you all for putting your trust in me, and I will exceed your expectations. Thank you for having me.
President Lane.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Amal Al-Qadre.
Good evening, everyone. I started with the district 14 years ago. I come to you with K-12 experience that includes teaching, counseling, and administration. I am both excited to, and honored to serve the Dearborn community in this new role as the principal of Snow School. So thank you for putting your trust in me.
And Mr. Dan Blessing for Howard Elementary.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. I want to thank the Board of Education, Dearborn Board of Education this evening, and Dr. Maliko and the entire administrative team for their support in this opportunity. I also want to especially thank the entire Howard Elementary learning community for the tremendous support that they have provided during this entire process. I was thrilled to have the opportunity to serve as the interim principal over the last 5 months, and I'm extremely thrilled to continue the great work that we have begun at Howard Elementary School. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Congratulations.
So when Ms. Tiba is in town, she'll come to meet the board as well.
Okay, now I have to read a summary of the agenda.
Action items.
Action items. Number 1, approval of filling board vacancy of Office of Trust. Oh, well, wait, forget that one. Number 2, approval of warrants. Hey, it's a long night. Approval of contract to Presidio and CDW Government for Chromebooks licensing and Chrome cards. 4, approval of purchase of Chromebooks from Presidio Holdings. See, it is Presidio. Approval of contract to Presidio for the purchase of 228 Dell Chromebooks. 6, approval of contract to Eagle Contracting Services per Board Report 16-112. 7, approval of contract to Tyco Security Services per sealed bid number 1316. 8, approval of contract for shredded wood in accordance with sealed bid 1310. 9, approval of contract to Miracle Playground Equipment. 10 to 12, approval of non-instructional and instructional personnel items for P12. 13, approval of Smith Middle School principal. 14, approval of layoff of P12 non-classified, non-instructional personnel. 15, approval of non-renewal of contract. 16, approval of financial statement. 17, approval of donations. 18, approval of principal of Snow. 19, approval of principal of Lindbergh. And 20, approval of principal of Howard. Oh, God. Don't let me miss track of the time here.
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me.
Okay, we're on to discussion item, policy updates.
Ms. Ali Bazey is going to come forward and discuss the, we have the relative policy and then the welcoming.
Good evening, everyone. I'll just be as brief as possible, and then it'll be open to questions, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. The first policy that the Policy Committee has discussed and looked at previously is the welcoming school district, which Dr. Maleko read in the beginning of this meeting. To summarize as brief as possible, I'll say that it's welcoming. Dearborn Public Schools is welcoming to everyone, including immigrants, refugees, internationals, and diverse individuals from all walks of life, seeking education and employment opportunities. And I'm going to read my favorite line in the policy, which is, we will continue to be an educational voice for acceptance, understanding, compassion, and inclusiveness for all. Are there any questions regarding the welcoming school district policy?
No, we're happy with it.
Very happy with it.
Proud of it.
And we'll speak about it when we vote on it next meeting.
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Okay, and the second policy, which is also a discussion item, is the policy about avoiding nepotism in hiring and supervising staff. And so to summarize it again as brief as possible, I'll say that a staff member being employed should not be placed in a position in which he or she would be supervised in the feeder track chain of command or organizational track of the supervisory responsibility of a relative staff member. So let me just explain that by giving an example. And so I already told Shannon Peterson that I was going to use her as the example. She's an executive director. Her daughter is a teacher at one of our buildings. And so her daughter could not teach in a building that is under her supervision. So she couldn't be in her feeder track. That's just one example. There's several other examples listed in the policy as well. This applies to instructional and non-instructional staff. Any questions on that? Trustee
Yeah,
Petrikov.
I've already asked this question, but I want to ask it in the public
Public,
realm, because I asked it privately to Dr. Maleko. I noticed that, and I know this might be spreading the feelers out too far, but we do have, the limit of relatives don't include cousins. I know we have a lot of cousins employed in the buildings, but I know it would probably be an almost impossible task to keep them out of the line of fire, so to speak. If we don't include cousins under this particular policy, are we still going to try to maintain a distance and make sure that there is not a closer supervisory relationship? Because first cousins especially can be very close. And it still sets up at least the appearance for potential problems in a building.
So to speak to that, what we would expect is full disclosure, and part of our hiring process on one of our employee requisition forms that principals use and that non-instructional has their form, their version of the same form, it says, are you related to anyone in the district? And so we already have that embedded in the forms that we use through the hiring process. And then also, if this policy is passed and approved, we will be surveying the directors and all of cabinet and all of our administrators to find out who is in their direct supervisory line or chain of command. As far as cousins go, we do expect that it's disclosed, and that if there are any employment issues that surround a cousin, because this policy doesn't include cousin, but if there is something that's happening, it's that they would excuse themselves from participating in that. So if it's the hiring process, for example, I could tell you I've been in Dearborn, working for Dearborn Schools for 20 years. There was one, and I have a very small family, but there was one time where I was in an administrative role and I had a cousin interviewing for a position in the same building, so I excused myself from the interviewing process because of that. So that would be one example, but it's expected that they excuse themselves.
We're talking about first cousins.
Yeah.
First cousins,
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, we'll say first cousins. I mean, really, if it's a cousin, then,
A
you know,
relative is
first,
a
second,
relative,
or.
I guess.
Yeah, what you
Well-
said was related. So to me, that's also in-laws and steps in there too.
And it does say step. The policy actually has been updated, and it says, I should have defined this in the beginning. It says the relative is defined as husband, wife, mother, father, brother, sister, daughter or stepdaughter, son or stepson, mother-in-law, father-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, grandfather, and grandmother.
But cousin isn't listed there.
Right.
What-
Right, that's why I asked the
Yeah.
question. And I know that this is something that occurs. I mean, it can't be avoided. This is a very popular district to be employed in, and there's a lot of relatives
There sure are.
in the surrounding vicinity. So I just want to make sure, because on occasion, I have been contacted over the years from somebody complaining that somebody's cousin was, you know, the principal's, you know, something or other, and so we want to make sure that we avoid
The
those
nepotism.
potential conflicts, yeah.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions?
I just make one comment too. It also, the policy outlines in the hiring, people can't be involved in any area of the process, you know, the hiring process. And then it has provisions for, you know, different departments that don't directly supervise, but like business services, you know, whether it be Mr. Wall or, you know, they may, if there were somebody involved, the relative, he wouldn't be directly involved in those situations, even though he doesn't directly supervise, or HR or student services.
I can say in HR, because I'm executive director of HR and student services, and like I said, I have a very small family, but I can tell you I have like very distant cousin, a very distant cousin that was involved in something, and so I had Mr. Cedarland. I took no role in it, and Mr. Cedarland did it, you know, handled it and dealt with it instead of me getting involved.
And
So
I think-
that's expected.
And with the cousin, I think, just to add to what, it was discussed in the committee, but I think because of what you just mentioned is why the committee, the policy committee decided to not include that.
I understood that, but I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure the
Important.
community at large
Transparent,
understands
yes.
it. Yes.
It's a good question, because we do have, like you said, it's a popular district in
Yeah.
a very large, tight-knit community.
Well, and I give the board credit because what we're saying is setting the parameters. And I know Trustee Barry, you brought up about hiring too, and just making sure, you know, people not having those, given that impression. So I think, you know, Trustee Hamud, you've brought that up through the committee. Trustee Lane and former Trustee Bazey brought that up. That's where it initiated through the policy. So I think it's, you know, forward thinking so that you're not in a situation where, so, thank you.
Dr. Mead? Trustee Dr. Mead, sorry.
That's all right. Feeder, what do you call them?
Feeder track.
Feeder track. Is that confusing to the community?
Let me explain. Good question. The feeder track would be that we have 3 feeder tracks. We have one for each high school. Dearborn High is the feeder track. The executive director that oversees that feeder track is Ms. Shannon Peterson for the Fortson feeder track. So that means Dearborn High, the middle schools that feed into Dearborn High, and the elementaries that feed into those middle schools.
Well, I just suggest that maybe that be put into the policy. If people are reading it, maybe they don't understand what we're talking
Will
about.
do, yeah, will do.
And I think we can have a link to the organizational chart in
The organizational
Or we have a
chart, right.
reference to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the feeder track could potentially be modified, so you don't want to put it in writing in a policy that would then have to be
Oh, rewritten.
rewritten, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. David's nodding because we went for training on development of board policies.
I've been there with the charter, so we learned less is more.
Good. Okay, anything else? Next, then, thank you.
Thank you.
The next, boundary line changes, school of choice and boundary line exemption, Dearborn High School addition. And we got everything in this section.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be brief as well. Basically, where we left off last
Sorry,
time, we were...
I'm sorry. Is it
no, I'm
10
look-
o'clock?
Yeah, it's a couple
We're a
minutes.
minute before?
I don't know if you should be
9:59.
done talking before it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'll be quick. I'm
Yeah, we
done.
could make
You're
it
going to
really
do it in
quick.
1 minute?
I can do it in 1 minute.
Oh, okay.
Basically, we had 2 other companies that looked at doing projections for us, Middle Cities and Plant Moran.
Right.
Middle Cities does it for free, but they don't do a very comprehensive job. Plant Moran, we have to pay about $4,000 to get their study. So that's what we're looking forward to getting. We just gave them some more information that they asked for at the end of last week. So hopefully they'll give us a better numbers as far as where our high schools are headed. And then we can compare that to the numbers that we already have. We're also looking at making some, looking at some other options as far as buildings and space and so on at some of our high schools as well.
So technically, we have our study,
Correct.
Middle Cities, and Moran. So we'll be able to compare three kind
Four,
of...
actually. We also have Stanford's study that was similar to what Middle Cities gave
Okay.
us.
Stanflex.
Stanford.
Oh, Stanfred.
Yeah, there's two guys, one named Stanley, one named Fred. They came together, you got Stanford.
Very creative.
Can you remind us the timeline with the Dearborn High edition? When did you say, if we wanted to have it going for the 2018-19 year, when were we going to need to start? Do I have that?
I could comment on that because Mr. Mashur wasn't. I was in a meeting with Mr. Grzinski and Mr. Wall and Mr. Martin. We were looking at potential plans. So I think by the fall, it's coming up. But we're looking right now with the architects, as the board directed us to look at different options. So it's underway. And hopefully we'll also have more details, I believe, coming through the Building and Site Committee, potentially at a July meeting or sooner if necessary. We may have to schedule something sooner, but it would be at the July meeting, prior to the July meeting.
Okay, you did do it in a minute.
See,
Wow.
thank you very much.
Okay, so we now need a
now we
motion
know.
to,
Motion to extend the meeting 15 minutes?
okay.
Second?
Okay.
Okay, we ready for a roll call?
Yep.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Mood?
Yes.
Trustee Mead?
Yes.
Trustee Petlicoff, yes. Trustee Thorpe?
Yes.
Trustee Lane?
Yes,
All right,
motion
back.
carries. Thank you.
2016-2017 second budget revision.
Good evening, everybody. Madam President, Dr. Malenko, members of the board, thank you for serving. It's not always an easy job, but I do appreciate you guys stepping up for our community, my community too. All right, budget presentation. There's two presentations. I'll go through it rather quickly because it has been a long night.
Oh,
So-
take your time, take your time.
You already said 15 minutes.
We've
I don't
already
know.
cleared the room, it's okay now.
But all right, so there's two presentations. One is about the 17-18 budget, which is next year's budget we're going to go through first. The second one is just a quick look at the current year budget as we end this year. So why are we doing this? Oh, mission statement first. So why are we here? I won't repeat the mission statement as to move along, but it's in front of your screen. So why we're doing what we're doing for the students of our district. Why legally, the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act requires, a process for adopting the budget so everybody has their participation. At the next meeting on the 26th, we'll actually ask the board to approve the budget. We also have to give a little time for the public, if there's any comments, to also comment about the budget prior to adoption. This is just a pictorial of our actual funds. Last year, I kind of talked about it, but this year I had it more visual, so you can see all the different funds that we have. The general fund is the catch-all fund. Otherwise, there's specific purposes for all the other funds. So you always kind of look at a bucket approach where you have a bucket of money for us to pick their purpose. The expenditure revenue is going to that bucket, and that's how you decide. So we break it down quite across the district. So there are roughly 420 responsibility centers. So those are the things that we actually give to the different administrators to actually oversee. Because obviously, it's such a large district, we can't do it all underneath one umbrella. We have to break it down. But unfortunately, there's a little over 18,000 line accounts. So that's a lot of line accounts. We have to account for the money, and that's dictated by the state and their mandated chart of accounts to why we have to have it that way. So when we roll the money up to the district of how we did that year, they can desegregate it and compare us to all the districts and different functions of how we're operating. So as part of the budget process, we do have to look at our millage. We have a hold harmless millage that we levy against all property. That's because we're a hold harmless district that back when Proposal A passed in 1993, our revenue was higher than the state maximum. So we're allowed to levy additional levy to make sure we maintain the same revenue for Dearborn schools as we did back in 1993. So it's called the hold harmless millage. That'll be at 6.17 mils for this upcoming year. In addition to that, we have 4.82 in debt millage to current our current debts. In about 2 or 3 years, our debt millage will start going down after the refunding we did back in February. And we also have the 18 mills that we levy for operating purposes. That's standard across all Michigan, and that's typical. If you want to get your full funding for our Proposal A, money per pupil, we have to levy those full 18 mills. So this is a form that we just give out to the cities and townships to show what we're going to levy. Actually, the college and the district are all on one form for them to levy. As a district, we usually do that on behalf of the college and submit it to the city and, well, both cities, Dearborn Heights and Fort Dearborn. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. So looking at our student counts, right now our student count is 20,640. That is a blended count, 90% for the fall and 10% for the previous winter. And we're actually looking at, for next year, 21,028 students. So we are going to grow about 387 students as according to our current projections. And that's obviously a big number because the state aid formula is our number of pupils times our foundational allowance, so that generates a large portion of our revenue for the district. All right, so looking back, if you remember, we've gone through this model many times. This is the model that we use for how we kind of project going forward. We're looking at adding roughly about 11 million to our fund balance this year. That's because several big things. One is the enhancement millage that was new for this year, and our budget plan that is we collect it this year, we spend it next year. And the next year we'll be collecting the new millage for that year and spending it the following year. So that first year, that money goes into our fund balance, which helps us with cash borrowing. If you remember, we've borrowed anywhere from 4 to 6 million over the last couple of years. So rolling that money into fund balance, we'll get out of the borrowing process for the next 6 or 7 years. So it's a good operational decision. In addition to that, we had the house sale of roughly 2.4 million. We have not actually as a board decided how to spend that money. So at this point, it'll roll into fund balance, and we have probably, depending on the Finance Committee discussion coming up next Thursday, we'll start talking about whether we want to set that money aside as a reserve for our future purpose or leave it unrestricted for any purpose. So those are the kind of discussions we'll start at the Finance Committee, which will then come up to the full board for discussion. So at the end effect, I won't go through all the details because you've seen this before in the budget updates, but we're looking at roughly about 196,000 surplus going forward, and that money will actually, so we're looking at a positive operating budget for next year. And this will be on the website too, underneath the budget area. That way, if anyone in the public wants to see more details, they can also look at it. Otherwise, I'm just going fast because I know you guys have seen a lot of this before. Looking at the foundation allowance, that's a big piece for us. The state aid bill has come out of the conference committee, but the conference committee and the governor have come to an agreement on that. So we're estimating under the 2X formula of roughly $60 to $120. Being a hold harmless district, we're going to be at the bottom at $60 per pupil. But in there also, if you remember last year, we received additional $60, but they couldn't give us the full $60 because of the inflation factor. They're limited by state law. So we had a category 20M that we had $51 in it last year. That money actually will, the way they have the legislation written right now, they'll actually roll into the fund balance for next year, which will have a trigger effect on salaries, as a lot of our contracts have a trigger effect depending on how our state aid foundation allowance goes up, has an impact on the salaries. So that will have an impact on the salary contracts. And we do have a conversation scheduled for tomorrow with all the union groups as we'll go through that particular issue for them. And there's also additional items that we go through of looking at next year's budget. Just to highlight a few, there's a lot of staffing assessments. We have roughly 62 models for staffing. So the executive committee administration went through that to kind of look at all the different models, what to include, what not to include. That's on the next slide, but that's something that we actually look at a lot of different items. It actually comes up through the administrators, what they request. It comes from different programs moving from one funding bucket to another funding bucket. It's a pretty big jigsaw puzzle that you'll see on the next screen that we kind of put in which model we look at. But in addition, we're putting some additional money in the unit budget for buildings, because obviously as the district is growing, we have more students, they need to buy desks. It's hard to fund that out of their current budget, so we're going to give them a one-year allocation to start replacing some of the desks and furnitures in the buildings. So you can see here, it's small, I know, so the public really can't read it, but this kind of goes through all the staffing models. So just kind of give you a snapshot of the discussion that has to happen at administrative level of how we run this district. And the staffing is obviously 85% of our budget, so staffing is a big component. So we spend a lot of time on looking at the different types of staffing, whether they should be included. Is it a 1 year? Is it going to continue for many, many years after that? We got to make sure we can sustain it. So those kind of discussions that we have for the staffing.
And we've had several meetings over the last couple of months with the executive cabinet,
Yes.
a lot of time discussion. And looking for strategic plan alignment as well.
Just touch briefly on capital project, because obviously that's a big component for us. We have still remaining bond funds that you actually purchased several computers today as part of the agenda that comes out of that bond funds. The last of the remaining capital projects is going to be, for the bond fund, is going to be for Duval's roof and a portion here at ASC. And then we also have money we contributed over the years from the general fund to the building and site fund for capital needs. So this just gives you a quick snapshot of some of the capital projects that are happening for this year. And the near term, obviously the finalization of the school aid bill, that's a big piece for us. They promised it by June 1st. Obviously that has come and gone. So we'll still wait to see what that happens. So there could be still some tweaks if we know before the June 26th meeting. Otherwise, we'll have to do that as a First Amendment in next year's school budget if that comes out later after the 26th of June. We'll continue to monitor closely how we finish out this current year. And obviously, as the next year comes in and we have higher or lower expectations that happen actually on our student class sizes, there'll be adjustments in there for that. Long term, we saw, obviously, as we just had the previous discussion on the capacity issues, that's something we're going to have to consider because that's going to have an impact on the budget. And obviously, next year, as you're aware, we're going to start negotiation for all the union contracts as they end in the 17-18 school year. And obviously, you want a contract in place prior to the start of the following school year. That's it. That was quick.
Questions?
I'll wait for our Thursday meeting.
Okay.
Well, and we were between 10:15 and 4. I don't know if we had the two options there. Trustee Thorpe.
You both said 10:15 is good for you?
Okay.
Yeah.
10:15? Okay.
We're meeting,
Yeah, it'll be in the superintendent conference room.
Thank you. All right, next agenda item, if you want to do the official announcement.
Okay. Next
So
agenda.
are we, the 2017, 2018,
This is the
This is the
16-17, yes.
okay, I was going to say, so what are we, which one are we doing then? You did.
We just did the 17-18, now we're doing the 16-17.
You got it out of
Oh,
order.
did I? I'm sorry.
The
I told David
2016,
the wrong thing.
2017 second budget
I'll take
revision. That's
responsibility for
why I'm.
How close are we on the time? I
Yeah,
think we're at
we
about
got
10:15.
5.
This one will be 2 minutes, maybe 3
Okay.
minutes.
Yeah, we got about 4 minutes.
Okay.
So obviously, as we go through, we're obviously not the end of the fiscal year, so we still have roughly about a month and a half of accounting, because we're always a little behind, a couple of weeks. So obviously, we're just kind of give you a quick snapshot of where we're at. Mission statement again, so as part of the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act, when we actually know there's significant change, we're required to have a budget amendment. So that's why we do want to amend it by the end of the school year. We usually do it twice a year, if not more. Again, just the funds. So this is a quick snapshot. So I know it's hard to read, but we're actually still on budget. We're off, we're actually going to have a little bit of larger surplus than what we budgeted going into this year. Again, we don't know what the final numbers are, but just so you know, there's a lot of things that were still unknown, like the enhancement millage. We've collected that money all year. Typically, Wayne County in the past has done a bond to kind of pay us off for the uncollected millage or that has been out there. We don't know if they're going to do that for the enhancement fund yet. So we're roughly at 80% of that millage collected. When the county does it, we usually get to about 95, 98%. So that's another about almost $2 million that we could still collect. But we don't know if Wayne County will do that or not. So that's kind of why we're kind of in limbo on some of that stuff. We have a lot of Medicaid funding that we do. The Medicaid funding is dictated by the state. That's roughly about $1 million. We don't know if it's going to hit this budget cycle or next budget cycle. So we're going to make a lot of estimates as we get closer to the end of the year. So as in any budgeting, when you're dealing with well over $200 million, you could have $1 million variance and it's still less than 1%. So just be aware that we can't actually predict that closely because a lot of things are out of our control. But there's utilities. The utilities have done real well again this year. It was a real mild winter again. Workers' comp, we're self-insured for workers' comp, so we have to set money aside at the beginning of the year at a larger value depending on how we do throughout the year. And then actually at the end of the year, like this last budget amendment, we'll actually reduce it back down to a number that we think we're going to hit at. But again, it's self-insured. We're insured for the first $500,000 on any claim. So actually, we're running around $200,000 cost this year. So it's been a good year in that sense. And so those kind of things of the final budget amendment, you kind of bring that money back into reality to kind of close that variance down. You can see some of the other adjustments. Just kind of show you a quick graph. The top one is the gas and electric. You can see we had a peak in 14-15, but after that, we've been actually running much lower. So it's actually been good for us on the utility side. Next graph is looking at salary and benefits. As you can see, it's just been a slightly increase going up with the contracts based on increases based on the increase in the foundation allowance. You can see as the foundation has creeped back, has gone up. And we've been actually hiring a lot more staff too with a lot of our money. Student count trends, this is a comparison between us and the county. We're at 20,614, and you can see the statewide and the county are actually reduction in student costs on the average. So Dearborn is doing well on how we're handling the increase in the kids. Revenue trends, again, slightly inclining up, actually increasing slightly higher because we're a hold harmless district, so we can maintain that level. Expenditures, same side, we're actually increasing as we go along because as our revenue and students increase, we have to hire new staff, so that kind of mirrors that increase. And our fund balance. So you can see I've actually carried this out for the next 2 years. So we were roughly at 6.8% at the end of last year. This year, we're going to 11.54. The year after that, 11.75. So we're actually going to have a big spike this year where you can see the actual, everybody else in our peers are actually kind of staying constant. So we're actually going to see a quite big increase for that. And that's it.
Questions? Okay, so we need
was
another
quick.
motion.
Hey, way to go,
Yeah,
Tom.
you got it done in time.
Thank you, Tom.
Looks like Trustee Barry is
Yeah,
ready
motion
to
to extend the
motion.
meeting another 15
I'll
minutes.
second, so one more roll call. Maybe
Trustee
we can-
Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Hamud?
Yes.
Trustee Mead?
Yes.
Trustee Petlicoff, yes. Trustee Thorpe?
Yes.
President Lane?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, on to the end.
All
I
right,
see
nobody better
people,
open their mouths.
No, I see people yawning.
Okay, Board of Education business, acknowledgment of correspondence, lots of emails.
Yes. Anybody
Anybody
have
else?
anything else?
Well, that kind
No.
of sums it up.
Yeah.
Board member, committee, and organization reports.
I would like to thank Trustee Hamud for volunteering to replace Trustee Bormer, now Trustee Vezzi, on the HFC Foundation. We needed someone to replace. The college has asked right away for someone. My assumption is that the other policy positions will go to the new trustee.
Replacement. Can I ask, just out of, Trustee Thorpe, have you had any luck in getting at least one city relations?
I was waiting
Committee.
until we got to the summer and things settled down for
Okay.
us.
No, that's it for me.
Okay.
Board member, superintendent commentary.
I have to say
Dr.
something.
Maleko has given us a physical, and as he proves by tonight's meeting, his endurance is good, and he's all ready to work. So-
Like all of you.
He's not going to
Qualified.
keel over anytime soon.
And I would like to pass this on to HR after the meeting, so that will go to his personnel file. But good news is that he's doing great.
Thank you, and it's required in my contract, so.
Yes, exactly, that's why
Thank you, though.
we have it. Okay,
I have something quick to say.
I'm sorry, I was.
And
go
I,
ahead.
and it'll be very, very, very brief, but while this board meeting is going on, another board meeting was going on in Ferndale Public Schools, and my cousin, Danya Hadis-Bazzi, was just appointed as their superintendent. I am so proud of her. I hope she watches this, or else I would have been there. She was one of the first people when we moved here from Lebanon to actually sit down, tutor me, grade my papers. So today she's being, she was just appointed and affirmed, and I am so very proud of her. So.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good. Okay, next item.
Request for information and/or future agenda items.
I would, in hearing the one presentation by the one candidate, triggered remembrance that I had heard on Michigan radio that the state legislature has passed a bill following the suicide of a middle schooler, I believe, trying to encourage districts to have training on suicide prevention, warning signs for suicide. So I did want to ask Dr. Maliko if we do anything to date. I think it was Ms. Sobe who talked about further training on depression and
We've had some training, I know Trustee Bazzi's through the PTSA Council, and
We've had about, I would say about a half dozen training sessions.
Oh,
And they have them approved, so our teachers and I guess any educator can get credit for it. And I've sat through
continuing education.
3 of them, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, continue. I'd sat about 3 of them here in this room, and very, very interesting. I mean, you just don't know. The trainers did an amazing job, and we have some of our own district employees step up and say, hey, and they were telling personal stories. So it's real, without a doubt, it's there. I forget the name of the group that's doing the training.
yeah, they're in contact with Ms. DeJager. I know for the social workers are
Yeah.
getting training as well. I
Some of the
can't
local-
recall.
They're
too.
doing a lot of, they're doing it at the local,
Yeah.
started at the community. I think the PTA council brought it over here. At the last meeting, there was probably like about 15, 20 people, and most of them were educators, so we're doing our part, and I'm sure we can always do more. We can do more, so.
Yeah, well,
I can
Good.
get an update
yeah,
on that, too.
I'd
in
like
board
to, I'd like
groups.
to know what exactly we do and whether, I don't know whether it can be squeezed into the training schedule, but it is an important thing.
And I think it's something we can, I haven't been able to attend the last few Healthy Dearborn meetings, but I am going to go to something tomorrow with them. And so we've had the conversation, because we also need to incorporate drug abuse and all of that too, because we don't really have anything official here either to help us with that. It's just kind of hit and miss as a building has a problem. So I did bring it up to them when I went to a different seminar at the college about that, so that Healthy Dearborn could include that as part of their promotion, because healthy lifestyles include a healthy mind and a healthy, so I will bring it to their attention as well, because they have resources through Beaumont Hospital and others as well that they can maybe, bring into the equation.
Good. Okay, anything, I have a couple other things that I just would mention to you quickly. At some point, I was over at the high schools playing tennis with my daughter, and it's amazing how much the citizens use our athletic facilities. They're really a treasure in the community. And it did occur to me that our football fields are, I think, beyond. I did email Jeff Burrick, and I think we're close to or beyond our warranties. We've maintained them really well, and they're really in good shape, but Fordson is showing significant wear, and Dearborn High has some wear also. But I would just like to throw out for people that I think at some point, maybe we should unlock the gates. The citizens do own the fields. We're going to be replacing them at some point, but it's just a thought. I mean, the community uses almost all of the other facilities, so we haven't opened up the football fields. The track
Except
is
that
there, so.
they climb the fences on
I
a
know
regular
they,
basis.
I know they can
So,
climb the fence.
because I see them every weekend
But that's
using.
not the, right.
But my question would be then, you're saying unlock the gates even once we reinvest taxpayer dollars to
I don't know,
re-enhance?
that's
Once
something
they
a little
get used to,
further
but once
down
they
the-
get used to it, then the expectation's going to be, it's open to us. Number one. Number two is that I see, and I hear from neighborhoods on a regular basis who yards back up to a lot of our school properties, the late-night noise that comes from
No, that's,
adult soccer games and whatnot. So once there's an expectation of being able to use the facilities, even if it's not the football fields, there comes with the potential for abuse. And then you have neighbors at odds with each other, and you have to waste taxpayer dollars by having the police called to come and resolve these issues. So I just want to, I'm not saying that I don't understand that it's, I'm not trying to ban that approach, but with it comes some responsibilities to the neighborhoods and the taxpayers as well, and we have to be very careful in
the
what we
district
decide to
did
do.
look at the use policies, I think, 2 years ago. I think I was serving as a citizen on that one. So I know it was addressed recently.
okay.
And
All right.
there was a lot of talk about those same topics that you're bringing up today.
Okay. All right, well, something else to think about. Another thing that Trustee Hamud and I became aware of is the Fadlallah family being interested in contributing possibly to, there's going to be, coming up this week, a tree planting over at Stout Middle School. But I don't know about the family. Some people were interested in fundraising to remember Imad Fadlallah at Fordson High School, a small area. So we looked at what was, I mean, Fordson's got so many places that are already named. We were all recently at the Brem Hall. And I would like people to think about whether we might honor our past principal. There are several other principals who are already honored there, but I wanted to put that out there because I know people are interested in marking Imad's contributions at Fordson, so.
And we've heard from many community members, Trustee Elaine and I, and we actually went to Fordson. Another area that was discussed was the library as well, that was also named after someone. And recently, B Hall was named after Dr. Brem and his beautiful wife as well, Mrs. Brem. And B Hall, the way it crosses over, there's the atrium where the tractor is, and I know that some of Mr. Fadlallah's family had also mentioned that that would be a place that they would be interested in honoring. So we have some options to look at, but I think that we should consider.
Trustee Petchikoff?
My concern here, once again, is, and it's not about the individual, it's about where does it stop? I mean, we have every building where somebody has a beloved principal at some point or another, so how do we regulate this? Because everybody is going to see this as an opportunity then to, you know, what, do we have criteria in place is what I'm asking? Do we have some kind of parameters of how we go about it? Because once everybody starts throwing out names, I love this person or that person or whatever, they could, it's going to become unmanageable at some, or could potentially. So I want to make sure that we're careful in when we start doing naming of things, or, you know, that people don't feel either it opens their door or people feel that they've been not represented somehow.
I know the word, his family has brought some ideas. To me, it's more his former students. They're making a big push for this. And we're all about students and student first. I think that, with me, that's very, very powerful. I attended almost all of his services and memorials, and it was the students that got my attention. And I think it's a lot of his former students, not just the very, very successful ones. He touched many, many, many lives. I mean, he was responsible for all three of my younger children to graduate. And I don't think he was just a principal. This was a school that was hurting badly. We don't want to get into the past. And it took somebody like the late Imad Fadlallah to step in and bring it back up. And I don't think it was just about that building, that school. It was a whole community that he was able to. And I don't think I've ever met anybody like this man that can uplift the whole community like this. So it's just more than just a principal. This is a man that did a lot for the community. We have a lot of successful students, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs that directly say this is the man that motivated me. This is the man that put me on track for higher
I'm just-
education.
I'm
Well,
just
I'm not,
saying that.
you're 100% right, but to me, personally, this is not just another
Everybody has a
principal,
story,
yeah.
I would assume, you know, about someone who touched them in some way. So I just want to, and stories of the opposite. So, you know, everybody has their own history to contribute in that regard. So we have to be careful that we, you know, if we honor one, then where do we stop?
Thank you, Trustee Berry, for the eloquence.
Yes, I definitely agree. It really has been the students that have been bringing this up, and the community as a whole.
So finally, I don't know if anybody else has anything, but I would like to remind ourselves that we're going to be at graduation pretty soon, and we can
Fun week this
congratulate
week.
ourselves at least on that. So,
It's been a stressful couple of weeks. I'm looking forward
Yes,
to this
indeed.
week
Yeah,
ending,
yeah.
and it's going to end on a high note.
yes.
How many do we have? I mean, I know it's
4,
probably
Wednesday,
1,100
Thursday.
graduates.
More than that, if.
600 at
yeah.
Fortson, I know.
Yeah,
That's
Fortson,
what
yeah.
Ham said.
So over 1,100
Yeah.
safe to say.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, good, good. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Looking forward
definitely.
to seeing everybody, too.
Just hope the rain holds off. That's the weather. We always.
Can't do anything about that. Can't do anything about that, yeah.
Are we
Anybody
ready, or we're
else?
going to have to call
Anybody
another
else?
15 minutes?
Anything? Okay.
Okay, future meeting dates, Monday, June 19th, 2017, HFC meeting, 7 PM at the Andrew Mazzara Services and Conference Center in the Rosenau Boardroom, Henry Ford College. Monday, June 26th, 2017, P12 Board of Education meeting, 7 PM at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Branch Boardroom.
Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.